Welcome back, ladies and gents. I'm Hatz, your friendly neighborhood hat man, and I'm back again for the next installment of the Gypsy Rose Prison Confessions, a series exploring the initial backstory of Gypsy Rose's actions as she was presented to a public audience in the run-up to her prison release. And producers do like a good underdog tale, and in Gypsy Rose Blanchard they had, on the surface at least, what appeared to be the perfect underdog. Young woman raised by a mother who exploited her own child and was party to a campaign of abuse and fraud that lasted from the birth of her child up to the point her own child murdered her. Sounds real good on paper, right? And that's what's been presented so far. The Gypsy was such a sweet, innocent girl who maybe made a few mistakes here and there, but was otherwise the complete victim of this whole scenario. And it's funny how things can be sanitized when agendas come into play. Anyway, my purpose here, so far anyway, is to review all of this from start to present, deliberately avoiding more recent revelations at least as much as possible so there's no spoilers, and hopefully along the way, we'll retake the steps of the viewers on the journey that producers, advocates, and PR experts wanted them to take, but with a little more objectivity, and sarcasm, and hopefully humor. But that's not where I intend to stop. While the official productions continue to provide this nice, clean image of a woman trying to build a life outside of prison, there were many questions that went unanswered or ignored. So once caught up with what they wanted people to see and wanted people to believe, then we'll go down into the rabbit hole of things that people perhaps should have been shown, should have been told, and, if they'd been inclined, could have learned. But all in good time, people. We'll get there all in good time. So, now, onwards to part 4, as Gypsy's parole hearing looms large and her story of events pre-arrest approach the murder.
I hear screaming and banging. There was still a point that she didn't have to die, and I wish I could have stopped it.
We are leaving right now to go to Gypsy's parole hearing.
I got my answer today.
No, you can never take my soul.
Your soul is mine.
So in this installment, we can look ahead to Gypsy's parole, which, spoiler, she is successful in. And apparently the realization that her mother didn't have to die, and she wishes she could have stopped it. Well, yes, she could have, but didn't. And her mother didn't, but did. We've already pretty much established that Gypsy has little to no concept of personal responsibility when it comes to her actions, beyond some token words and phrases to pay lip service to her claims of regret. But I guess we'll see where this episode leads us.
There is a level of anticipation going into a parole hearing because you're getting your chance to speak and show them how far you have come from point A to point Z. I am not the same person that I was 6.5 years ago.
I think she meant point B, otherwise the inference of point Z being that you're at the end of your journey, and from a philosophical sense are probably dead, like your mom, because of you. But yes, the anticipation of a parole hearing where you have to convince some strangers you've basically learned your lessons, you're a better person, and you're no longer a risk to anyone. So basically you just have to lie convincingly.
I feel like Gypsy finally is finding herself, finding that independence. She's made a lot of mistakes, but she's learning. My name's Blanchard. Gypsy Rose is my half-sister, but I refer to her as my sister. I feel sorry Gypsy didn't get the life that I got to live. I got to grow up with a loving father and a loving mother. I got to grow up going to school with my friends, hanging out with my friends, learning to do all these things, and she never had that. That was taken away from her by her mother.
If we were to run a Deadpool on who Gypsy's next victim would be, I think we've got a strong candidate there in her half-sister. Growing up in a life that Gypsy never had, presumably popular, well-adjusted, purely speculating here, but I would guess she has a decent enough life and job. And I mean, jealousy can be a powerful motive. I guess Maya, however you pronounce that, can count herself lucky that Gypsy landed on her feet with a nice little reality show and a social media profile that she could trade on.
I always thought that 10 years was too long. She deserved to be in jail, but she also deserved to get help.
I would argue it wasn't long enough, considering the premeditation that went into plotting her mother's murder, from the recruitment of Nicholas Godejohn, or however you pronounce his name, to sneaking away to obtain the murder weapon, to the visual guide she acted out for him so he'd know what to do, where to do it, when to do it. Sure, they're both guilty as hell, but the level and cold calculation, preparation, and exploitation on her part, in my opinion, makes her at least as culpable as the guy who did the stabs. Hell, she'd probably have done it herself if she possessed more physical ability and strength, or guts, which, ironically, might have given her a more plausible claim to lodge a self-defense defense.
Now I'm finally telling the whole story from my words. Nick and I tried this whole meeting at a movie theater with my mother, and it went horrible.
I felt desperate to live a normal life.
That's when Nick and I start going into other plans.
Hey, whenever you caveat something like, I'm telling the whole story in my words, it's like preemptively admitting that you're lying your ass off, or at least leaving out many crucial details. But she is at least admitting the other plans are now afoot.
What happens if you would get me pregnant? If I was pregnant, he would have to stay in my life and be around.
Not an entirely unusual thought process, and not something that other women haven't considered or carried out before. Entrapment by pregnancy. Not cool. And also a plot element that will be set aside and recycled at a future date for her.
The emotional bond Gypsy had with her mother was extremely unhealthy. And Gypsy is starting to feel a little more independence. She wants to do anything she can to not lose Nick. Things are starting to come to a head.
And here's the good doctor to provide his expert psychological opinion and basically describe the thought process of vast numbers of females throughout history, that they will do whatever they can to keep their man on side. I mean, it's not entirely unreasonable. Once you have that emotional connection with someone, you don't really want to let it go. Whether it's a healthy connection, of course, now that's a whole different matter. Bottom line, he's not describing anything that unusual. It's only because of the characters in this particular story that it seems that much more weird.
At the time, I was fully aware that I could walk, that I could eat, that I didn't need the feeding tube, that I didn't have a seizure disorder. I was even suspicious that I didn't have cancer. When my mother got the power of attorney papers saying that I'm incompetent to care for myself, it really became clear to me that I was trapped. Because if I was to attempt to run away again, the cops would just bring me right back to my mother because she's got these papers saying that, like, I'm mentally challenged.
It is a shrewd move on Dee Dee's part, and that whole little explanation from Gypsy is pretty much the whole reason a long-running scam is about to implode. Under normal circumstances, you could put it down to a rebellious teenager wanting to do her own thing and exert control over her life. I mean, most of us have done it, right? Natural desires for almost all of us, but something that would bring about the downfall of everything her mother had worked to put together, and something that Gypsy had been part of to varying degrees. If I gave her the benefit of the doubt here, it would be that she wanted a normal teenager / young adult type independence, without really understanding the consequences of what would inevitably be exposed to the world if she got that freedom. I don't think Mommy would have wanted to lose her meal tickets, let alone the many years she'd no doubt spend in prison for orchestrating such an extensive scam. That said, she probably also didn't expect that she'd end up being murdered by her own daughter when she didn't get her way.
As time went on, it began to be more clear that I was not going to get away from my mother while she was alive.
So those mental cogs be a-turning and Gypsy be a-realizing that she ain't gonna get freedom without her crazy mama dying. Yes, Gypsy, please do tell us more about how you were fantasizing months ahead of the act that you could only get away from your mom if she was dead.
This is classic of kids who are held hostage or victims of kidnappers. They're kept in a horrible prisoner situation for a long time, and they've been thinking about, how can I get out of this? And then they see that window closing. Gypsy was desperate to get out.
The expert implying the victim bears little to no blame for her actions because she was a prisoner and was watching her opportunities to escape disappear before her eyes. Well, that may be the case, but she had plenty of chances beforehand. Though the application of power of attorney to declare Gypsy mentally incompetent would have been a game changer, and as Gypsy has already admitted herself, she knew what that would mean. Not that she still couldn't have done the bloody obvious, like, stand up and walk around to prove that she wasn't crippled, need a wheelchair. One of those major deceptions that the two of them had imposed on the world. But no, we'll go with mitigation as to why premeditated murder was completely understandable.
Was it you or him that started coming up with this new plan, which is her not around at all?
It was me. It was my idea. We got into a conversation. Nick was telling me how he would protect me from anyone. And I asked him, I said, anyone? And he said, yes. And I said, even my mother? And he said, yes.
Yes, we started talking about murdering my mom. Yes, it was my idea, and I gaslit him into it by questioning whether he'd protect me from anyone, including my own mother. And Nick, being like a 70 IQ guy with multiple personality disorder and a whole slew of other mental disabilities, is like a nodding donkey to pretty much everything put towards him. And you knew it then, you know it now, and you'll always know that you started it all. You had no intention of stopping it, and you planned the whole thing. Meanwhile, he would carry the bulk of the blame and never see freedom again, while you get out and live an almost celebrity-type lifestyle.
He starts talking about fantasies of murder and rape and crime, and these are all things that I didn't know existed in him at first. And that is when he told me that his alternate personality's name is Victor, that he's a 500-year-old vampire. He starts talking to me about how Victor loves to kill and would kill my mother for me.
I mean, I don't dispute necessarily what she claims about his weird and dark fantasies, but I would dispute any suggestion she either didn't indulge or outright play along and encourage them. However, claiming that she didn't know about them being part of his personality, whichever personality that might be, isn't an excuse when you become very much aware of them and just shrug and accept them, such as Victor, his vampiric alter ego, who also happens to get off on murder. How very convenient. I guess the crazy man with the bonus murderous persona is perfectly fine to keep in your life, even after he starts going down the path you suggested about killing off your mother.
And did you believe him that he's capable of this?
I believed that he was capable of this, or at least I believed in this alternate personality that he had had. He sort of directed me to do research myself about ways to commit murder. He suggested poison, and so I Googled different kinds of poisons. Then he suggested arson, that I just drop a candle on the bed and it would just burn the house down. I suggested the gun. And he said that a gun would be too loud, that it would alert the neighbors.
I believed he had a murderous personality and happily went along with finding ways to kill my mom.
He suggested a couple of basically dumb ways. I mean, really, drop a candle on the bed. But Gypsy suggested the gun because she wants to be sure the job gets done right. And Victor, the evildoer, knows, as anyone who ever watched even the most basic police show, guns are loud enough to wake the dead, as well as create new dead.
We finally settled on a knife as the weapon.
How'd you get the knife?
I stole the knife from a Walmart.
What are your thoughts on your mindset back then?
I pity myself. I look at myself as a scared little girl, trapped and desperate to get out of a bad situation. I wish that I knew that there were people that I could go to for help. I wish that I would have known that I didn't have to commit this crime.
You didn't know you didn't have to commit the crime. What, the fact you were openly talking about murdering your mother with your mentally challenged multiple persona boyfriend wasn't a big enough red flag? Sure, you keep telling yourself and anyone who listened that you had no way out, but in hindsight you wish you could have told someone and avoided it. I mean, it's not like you didn't have countless opportunities over the years, right? But nope, murder, which now you wish you knew was a bad thing, that you didn't have to do it.
Had I asked a responsible person to commit murder, their response would have been, no, I'm going to the authorities. But Nick was like, okay, I'm going to kill your mother.
Is that supposed to be an excuse? If you asked a responsible person to kill your mom, they'd have called the cops on you. But because Nick was 4 cans short of a 6-pack and went along with what you suggested, then it's all his fault for doing what you asked?
Hey, a normal person wouldn't do this, would have stopped it. So I picked a mentally deranged lunatic, and he happily went along with it. So obviously, it wasn't really my fault.
People buy this bullshit? Wait, what am I saying? Of course they do. Otherwise, she wouldn't have a reality TV show camera crew following her around constantly.
The death of my mother was the death of a mother figure. However, she wasn't the mother that I wanted. Anyone can see the desperation that I had. And that's why I made the choice to commit murder.
Bitch, in the last clip, you literally just tried to pin the blame on the guy who was dropped on his head repeatedly. And to be fair, you did successfully pin most of the blame on him. And yet, here you are telling the world that you chose to kill your mother? So he's to blame for not stopping you from going ahead with your plan to kill her off? Bollocks. You knew what you were doing from the beginning. You gaslit him into doing what you wanted all along, and then you tried to play the innocent retard, which had a modicum of success for you in court, but failed miserably for him. Probably because you threw him under a bus. And I'm sure it's pure coincidence that the producers chose that particular picture of Dee Dee a moment after Gypsy's trying to explain why she was justified in doing what she did. Hey, yeah, can we find the most crazed, psychotic-looking photo of Dee Dee Blanchard to slap in right here? You know, we want to make her look like a complete psycho. Yeah, that sounds good. Thanks.
Nick really wanted to make my mother suffer as much as possible in a very violent and demented way. And so one of the fantasies that he expressed to me was that he wanted to murder her, and then he wanted to dump her on an abandoned farm. There's pigs there, and apparently pigs eat anything. But beforehand, he wanted to rape her with me by her side while this was happening. I was a little frightened about that.
Yeah, that is some pretty sick, twisted shit. And I don't know if these messages were brought up in the trial, or if this was some voice conversation, but it's a selection of acts that would be sure to give most people the heebie-jeebies and would sure as hell be damning in the eyes of a jury. However, this dude's on the other side of the internet, so if he was making you feel uncomfortable, why not simply cut him off, block him? I mean, I'm not gonna say tell your mom, because, hell, she'd probably freak out that you were talking to someone, but for someone so terrifying, you continue to interact with him and also plot a murder with him. Yo, Gypsy, you know that comment you made a few minutes ago? You know the one about how a normal person would have turned you in for suggesting you kill your mom? Here's you talking with a guy, apparently telling you that he's willing to kill your mother and the depraved things he wants to do, but you're not turning him in? So he's bad for not reporting you fantasizing about killing your mom, but he's also bad for fantasizing about killing your mom at your request. So exactly where do you sit in this whole scenario when it comes to responsibility?
Then he told me Victor had certain rituals that he wanted to be done. And it was that if we would have a daughter, that upon her 13th birthday, he would take her virginity. After that conversation, I dumped him.
Well, I should hope so, but of course we know it wasn't a permanent thing because you still needed someone to do the deed and get rid of your mom. But yes, be sure to drive a few more nails into his coffin and ensure he can present as a complete monster. Which, yeah, perhaps he was, or still is. Unlike you, Gypsy, he also has a litany of genuine psychiatric disorders and learning disabilities and the mental capacity of a 7-year-old or something. Damn, I guess the production crew was really on their game when it came to finding the most disturbing pictures of the villains in Gypsy's story.
A few days later, he sends me a text message and a message on Facebook saying that he didn't mean it, and that's just Victor.
You have to understand that I thought that Nick was going to be my Prince Charming. I thought this was someone that was my forever, so I took him back. I really thought that Nick loved me, and he was my way out.
So within, what, a week? I'm assuming a week because a few days sounds like it'd be less than a week. So within a week, she's gone from, I dumped him because he was talking about raping my dead mom and any daughters that we might have, to, I thought he was my Prince Charming and would save me. Yeah, in other words, you looked around and thought, shit, I need him to get rid of my mom, otherwise I'm going to have to do it myself, and then I'll get all the blame.
How was the date picked for the murder of your mother?
We picked a random date, and it was pretty much the soonest possible that I could get enough money to buy the bus ticket for his transportation to Missouri.
I stole the money from my mother's safe and sent it to him like a greeting card.
So basically, impatience was setting in, and you wanted mommy gone as quickly as possible. Perhaps a necessary acceleration, because now you were seeing just how nuts the guy was who you were setting up to do the deed, and hopefully, once it was done, you could get away and blame him. After all, the longer you wait, the greater the possibility you might go away and leave your only option to either do it yourself or just, maintain the status quo.
I made a video for Nick that's kind of like a walkthrough of what the house layout looked like, what my mother's bedroom looked like. Because he would be walking into her room in the dark. I made the stabbing motion because I was high all of the time on pain pills. The side effects of those create this disconnection to reality.
Yeah, it was totally all his fault. He was completely in the wrong for not talking you out of it or calling the police to stop you, as you prepared a plan of action for him so he'd not only know where to go and where things were in your mother's room, not to mention where she slept on the bed, but also to show him what you want him to do. Like, literally, stab-it-y, stab, stab.
Regardless of the things that I have done, my stepmother, Christy, has been there for me without judgment. I haven't disclosed everything to everyone, but I am finally starting to understand who I am and what's happened to me.
Who you are is a liar when it suits and a fraud when it benefits you. I'm not going to claim to know all the inner workings of the mother-daughter relationship here, but setting aside the decades of fraud and bullshitting everyone they ever encountered, the basics appear to come down to control, and Gypsy wanted control of her own life while at the same time presumably not giving up the creature comforts of having everything handed to her or everyone else doing things for her. The problem with that, of course, is that her life was dependent heavily on her mother directing and acting in a massive scam, exerting control while Gypsy is the co-lead actress without whom the show couldn't go on. So I guess kind of a immovable object versus unstoppable force. So the only solution is to remove one of them. In this case, Mom. And if she could orchestrate it just right, then Gypsy gets to have a life of her own while keeping many of the perks that come with doing nothing to earn it.
My mother and I had planned to watch a movie. Nick had told me that I should tell her that I love her. And so I gave her a big hug. I remember her telling me, "What's that for? I'm not dead yet." I went back to her bedroom and I cried. And part of me didn't want to go through with it. I hugged her pillow. It had her scent. And then after that, we put the movie in and we started watching the movie.
Aww, on some sad music to overlay as she expresses her sadness over the impending death of her mother that she had literally choreographed to the crazy dude she paid the bus fare for to come and do the deed. You tears, some recounting of emotional actions like smelling her mom's sweaty pillow, and then going to sit next to the woman you signed a death warrant for, knowing that within a few hours she's going to be stabbed to death by the guy you spent months seducing online.
About 2 hours later, Nick texts me that he's at the hotel, and at this point she's fallen asleep, and so I text him that she's asleep, so he takes a cab over to my house, and the first thing he tells me upon entering is, "The bitch is dead."
Why do you sound like you're upset? You're not. You paid for him to get there, told him when she was asleep so he could get his ass over to the house and do the deed, and what, you're complaining that the first thing he said after he arrived was, "She's dead"? What, was he supposed to say, "Hi babe," first, have some small talk, maybe catch up on your days, give you a hug, a kiss, before you get down to the butchery? I mean, yeah, that's only manners, right? I swear this bitch complains about everything.
And he said, "Get your effing ass in the bathroom now." I get down on the ground and I cover my ears and I hear her wake up and I hear screaming and banging. It stopped for a moment, and so I uncovered my ears, and that's when I hear her calling my name. And she's like, "Gypsy, help me." And to this day, I can't get that out of my head. And I wanted to help her, but I don't. I don't do anything. I just sit there. And then I hear her screaming again. And then there was one sharp scream, and then it was over. It was silence. I didn't hear anything.
Ding dong. Squeeze out some more tears, reliving the trauma, why don't you? But of course, all the regrets, real or fake, are because of what you started, what you orchestrated, and then you have the nerve to sit there and play victim. Yes, you were complicit in taking a life. Those sorts of things tend to stay with you, so yes, your mother's dying screams and begging should be expected to haunt you. Or do they really? And by all means, just slide in some more revelations about Nick Goodajohns to remind everybody that he's a very bad man who killed your mom at your request.
I'd do anything to just go back to that moment in time. Yeah, there's so many moments in time that I wish I could go back to. But there was still a point that she didn't have to die. And I wish I could have stopped it.
Well, unless you can get a hold of a Mr. Fusion, maybe some plutonium in a DeLorean, there's not much you can do now. Just perhaps you shouldn't have started something that you knew was wrong. Or once you started it and had some second thoughts, not followed through on what you knew was wrong. I mean, shit, you shot your mother with a BB gun several times before all of this, so it seems pretty clear that you wanted your mom dead and intended your mom to die. Now you're basically claiming buyer's remorse or killer's remorse. So try to squeeze out some more tears. Look to the producer for some sort of there endorsement. You want your mom dead and you found a patsy to do it for you.
Nick came to the bathroom door. He was holding the knife. He had blood coming from his finger. He cut his finger. And then he instructed me to clean up the droplets of blood that was throughout the house.
And what did he do?
He just watched me the whole time. He never took his eyes off me. At the time, I was completely dissociated from what was happening. It was like it was a bad dream.
First, the fact that he managed to cut himself pretty much confirms his dumbassery. Though he isn't alone, because he isn't the first and won't be the last knife-wielding murderer to slash up himself in the process. That aside, of course he's going to watch you, because he isn't going to want you running off and getting the cops and pinning the blame on him. That you managed to blame him for most of it anyway pretty much shows he was right to worry about it. I hope, though, that you're not about to complain about him telling you to clean up. I mean, after all, the guy's just traveled across the country to kill your mom for you. The least you can do is a little bit of cleaning up. I mean, it's not like you were being asked to dispose of a body. You're not Mary Barone, after all.
Nick commanded me to be naked. And then the command that because I didn't let him rape my mother, that I had to agree to let him rape me.
I don't want to suggest trivializing sexual assault, so I'll leave it entirely up to you guys and your individual decision whether she's telling the truth and being honest or not. Was she a rape victim, thereby further cementing Nicholas Goodijahn as a monster? Or is she weaponizing such a claim to vilify him further while making herself appear to be an even greater victim? Only two people really know at the end of the day. Nobody else does. Nobody else can prove a thing.
I'm trying to clear my thoughts so I can have sound thinking for my parole hearing. It feels like after everything that I have been through, why keep me here? It's not going to bring my mother back.
Hey, I know I murdered my mother, or at least planned the whole thing and sat back while it happened, but you should totally let me go, because keeping me locked up ain't bringing her back.
Oh, it's so sweet that you killed your mom, and you totally shouldn't be punished for it, because what's the point when it's not going to resurrect her? But by all means, do please keep the other guy locked up forever, because that also won't bring anybody back from the dead.
After Nick killed my mother, he told me to get in my bedroom and take off all the stuffed animals that was on my bed. I knew that he was going to have sex with me. Never once was it a fantasy to me. When I yelled stop, he didn't. I called for my mother.
Yeah, by then it was probably a little bit late to be calling out for your mother, as her still warm body lay in a pool of her own blood in the other room. Something that came about, full enough, because of you. And why such vitriol on the word sex? I mean, weren't you role-playing some of his bizarre fantasies during the many online encounters between the two of you? After all, there were plenty of pictures of you in the costume of your own alternate persona, right?
And then after, I blacked out for a little bit because he was choking me. When I came to, he told me to get ready and then called the taxi cab. We left the house and we get to the hotel. I was a little frightened that someone would see me, but I was wearing a wig.
Now, perpetual victim of her own machinations, Gypsy Rose gets choked out, wakes up, and then goes to a hotel. No one was ever going to recognize her because of a wig. Now, I know that she's had work done on it, for which she should probably claim a refund, but she could look like Cousin It or Chewbacca. It's not going to take away from the pelican beak in the middle of her face.
I was very high on pain pills, but I enjoyed being with Nick. We ordered pizza and thought it would be funny to make a quote-unquote porn video. And so I'm like, oh, we're going to make pizza porn. And he's laying there next to me naked, and we're talking about brownies and pizza.
He's eating a brownie. But later he will be me.
And then he's like, put your phone down. He took the phone from me, and we're not videotaping anymore.
No. No, there are some things that should never see the light of day, and gypsy porn is definitely one of them. I mean, we should all now be aware that there is a precedent here. So fear the day when her reality TV career finally does come to an end, and she turns to OnlyFans. Yes, I joked about it in previous installments, but I didn't know about this. So yeah, it's probably going to happen one day.
When we got to Nick's house, he told his mother that my mother had kicked me out of the house and that I would be staying with them. And she seemed very fine with it. But I began to think a little bit more about my situation.
I could see that he's not the independent man that I thought that I was going to be living with. He had a small room in the upstairs loft, and it looked the equivalent of a 15-year-old boy's room. There was a wrestling comforter on his bed.
What the F did I get myself into?
Yeah, those of you that follow the main channel are probably thinking the same thing I am, but she was in Wisconsin, not Pennsylvania. So this is a completely different attic-dwelling, wrestling-obsessed, mentally deranged loser with delusions of grandeur. As for what the duck you got yourself into, Gypsy, the fact you planned and executed what was effectively an assassination should make it pretty clear what you got yourself into. Premeditated murder. Well, it's nice that's on the record at least. I mean, he's only been accused of it non-stop throughout this particular episode. But it could cut several ways. It was too difficult to prove, and Gypsy's not exactly the most reliable of witnesses, having literally encouraged and supported this guy in killing her own mother. Or they want to nail both of them for murder, and securing a conviction against her becomes more difficult if he's facing rape charges against her, suggesting that maybe she was coerced into it. And lastly, it's also somewhere between exaggerated and bullshit, but presents her once again as a perpetual victim.
6.5 years ago, being in court, facing the judge and the prosecution, I had my attorneys there, and they spoke for me. I'm walking into this room all by myself. There's no one to speak for me but myself. I'm so nervous, but I'm gonna do everything I can to show the parole board the best version of myself.
You know, it's always good to hear her talk about the best version of herself, because it just serves to remind that she's obviously capable of presenting herself in different ways, depending on what she wants or can gain from the situation. Most of us do that, of course, but then most of us have murked one of our own parents and palmed most of the blame onto someone else. Damn straight, she wants to present the best version that she can, because the true version is dishonest, selfish, and manipulative as hell.
After arriving at Nick's house, it was not freedom like I thought that it was going to be. And that was not something I expected. Nick would control what I would wear. He picked out what I wore. He picked out what I would watch, just like my mother did. He picked what we would eat.
I wonder if they'd stay together longer. Would she have found someone to do away with Nick? Or would she step up and do it herself? Or perhaps more deviously, convince him to terminate himself? Though, having gotten rid of her mother, now she's complaining that she hooked up with a guy who was basically the same, at least the way she describes it. She does, of course, blatantly ignore that given his own special needs, he was undoubtedly OCD in some, if not many ways. Probably ate a lot of the same foods over and over, watched the same TV shows and movies repeatedly. But I definitely doubt the suggestion that he picked out her clothes and told her what to wear. Most men don't do that, let alone ones with the mental age of a child. I just don't believe her with that claim. I mean, Nick's the guy in prison forever, so he has to be as evil as she'd have us believe her mother was.
And that's a thought to myself, is this really what I traded? That life for this life? Is this really what I wanted? That remorse and that guilt started to surface. And the idea of my mother being dead in her bed and no one knowing. I wanted her to be found.
Yes, you wanted her to be found, but you didn't want to take the blame, and your little happily ever after fantasy was still just a fantasy, and now you wanted and needed to remove yet another person from your life who was an obstacle. So, if your mother's found, people will look for her killer, and there he is, with you. I mean, hell, you're already formulating the plan in your mind to say that he was abusing you and raping you and controlling you, right?
That's when I decided to make the post on the Facebook account that my mother and I shared.
What stuck out in my mind, what to post, is exactly what Nick said upon entering the house. The bitch is dead. And so that's exactly what I posted. Then I posted a second post to let them know the account's not hacked. I wrote, I slashed that fat pig and raped her sweet innocent daughter.
I put that online because I felt like that would alarm people.
Bitch, you put that online because it pointed the finger squarely at your boyfriend.
I killed her and raped her daughter.
Pretty much setting the groundwork for someone killed your mom, they attacked you too. 2 for the price of 1. You've planted the seed of a murderer killing your mom and raping you, while you can simultaneously be the victim of this vicious murdering rapist.
My name is Alan Voss, and I was a senior detective for the Waukesha County Sheriff's Department in Wisconsin. Greene County Sheriff's Department were alerted by friends of the family that there had been some alarming posts on Gypsy's and Dee Dee's joint Facebook account. After being alerted to these posts, they went to the Blanchard home in Springfield, Missouri. When detectives searched the home, found Dee Dee was murdered in her bedroom.
Mission accomplished, right, Gypsy? You alerted your followers online, and now the cops found your mom's body. You're gone, and then all the forensic and detective work would begin. And of course, one of the first avenues they're going to explore would be the IP address of that Facebook login. It's a good thing that you made it sound like Nick was making the post, and that you were either dead or his hostage. I wonder how that might happen with his entire family around to witness that it wasn't happening.
They also found that Gypsy's wheelchair, which she needed all the time, was still at the residence. One of the initial theories based on those facts was that Gypsy may have been abducted.
Right now, we are very concerned about 19-year-old Gypsy Rose.
Well, for a time, it seemed like a good job. I mean, everything sounded practically perfect. Poor little Gypsy taken, her mother murdered. There's no way that she could be involved with such an act, right?
Every choice that I have made, whether it be good or bad, leads up to this moment. I think if I had to spend my full 10 years within this facility, I'm not gonna lie, I would be heartbroken.
Oh my god, the entitlement of this bitch. The whole 10 years for the premeditated murder of your mother and doing everything you could to point the whole blame at your boyfriend, who will never have the opportunity for a parole hearing. But you'd be heartbroken if you didn't get your way again and get let out early. It sounds to me like that's more heartbreaking to you than your mother's death, which you caused, in case it slipped your mind.
I got my answer today. It's really good news. I am leaving prison and going home on my earliest out date of December 28th, 2023. I'm just so overwhelmed. I'm emotional. It just doesn't seem real.
Well, I mean, it's not like this was a spoiler. Her face has been plastered across TVs and the internet for the last 18 months. But it's kind of like in Titanic. Even though you know they're going to hit the iceberg, a part of you still hoping against hope that somehow, by some miracle, the ship's going to turn. And here we know she gets released, but you still kind of have a little speck of hope that something is just going to magically rewrite reality, and the answer that she gets is no.
She was imprisoned for so long by her mom, and now that devil's not standing above her, watching every move that she made, she's completely free.
I wish I could have done something for her so that she wouldn't have spent all this time in prison, but she can certainly go forward, and she will be a better person.
Yes, she's free. She's free of the devil, free to be a better person. Spoilers from the snippets I've seen from Life After Lockup. It seems that she has so far failed in that. Still a victim, still whining, still manipulating people. Same shit, different show.
When the day comes that Gypsy does get out of prison, this will be her room.
We can clear it all out and do whatever she wants.
Yeah.
Get her new decorations or whatever she needs.
When she gets out, there's going to be some big adjustments. Hopefully she uses the support team that we have in place for her to become a productive young lady and happy and have the life that she's always dreamed about.
Yeah, about that. I'm not sure how productive someone is going to be when their existence is fueled by enablers and TV producers. And I don't know what happened here. I assume since she was released 18 months ago, her stay at dad and stepmom's house was minimal. I mean, I don't know at what point she left. I guess that's something that's answered in Life After Lockup, but I hadn't watched that yet. Soon, though. Soon.
When I get paroled, it was always the plan that I was going to go and live with my dad and Christy. However, I have been keeping a secret.
You may start the conversation now.
Hey, babe.
Hey, baby, just so you know, I got her marriage license.
I am engaged.
Wow.
Ah, so that's what happened and where Timu Peter Griffin lookalike came in the picture. Gotcha.
I know Gypsy's the one because I feel it.
Oh, God.
Please don't get married. Why now? Why rush?
I think that Ryan has concerns that when I get out of prison, am I going to be loyal to him? And can I be the wife that he needs me to be?
Okay, so that's where the real fun begins. The prison engagement, marriage, or whatever, to one of the most desperate guys on the planet, and the realization from everyone who has supported her that she really is a dumbass. And she says about Ryan's concerns that she can be faithful to him. Yeah, no, you can't. It's not within your capabilities or your nature, because you're a whore. You know, this feels like it was quite a long one with lots of bits and pieces to react to, but it also feels like it's starting to ramp up more as we get to the point where we can witness what idiocy she's doing in real time, albeit with an 18-month time lag because I'm playing catch-up, and less about setting the scene for what got her locked up in the first place. I'm really enjoying these now, and I'm looking forward to the next couple of parts, even though I don't know what they involve yet. I appreciate you all for hanging out to watch these with me and sticking with me on this little journey, and I look forward to seeing you in the chat and the comments for future installments. If you haven't already, then please favor the video with one of the thumbs up or down, preferably up, of course. But whatever your honest opinion is, and feel free to share that opinion in the comments. Subscribe to the channel and turn the notifications on. I'm targeting bi-weekly for these videos because of real-life commitments I have, in addition to my streaming commitments on Rumble and my other YouTube channel. Links for both will be in the description. We usually have a good laugh on Friday night shows. Until next time, though, be good. Don't plan any assassinations, and, you know, if you have no alternative, at least don't get caught. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.